Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I have been told that we have 1 hour and everything has to be completed in an hour. So we will start now. So first of all, let me welcome you all to this event which celebrates World Children's Day. I'd like to welcome all of you here. And in particular, I would like to welcome all those from around the world who are present on Zoom today. The event is being live broadcast on Zoom, so we'd like to welcome all those people, all those Marists from around the world who are also celebrating World Children's Day. In particular, today at FMSI, we are celebrating the right of children to be children. Okay, the right to be children, and we will have a number of people who will speak to us about this right, the right of children to be children. A little practical detail before we start. The event will be in English and Spanish, so people who are in the room and who would like translation into Italian, there are translation devices at the back of the room that you can use to have the event translated into Italian. And for those online, the event will be translated into English, Spanish, and Italian. At the bottom of your screen, if you just click on language, you choose the language you would like the event translated into, and it will be translated. Okay, so to start this morning, I invite Brother Ernesto Sanchez, who is the Superior General of the Marist Brothers. And as you're all well aware, FMSI is it used to be the ONLUS, it's now the ETA, the foundation that does advocate for child rights and also has a number of projects throughout the world in which we support poor children and young people. And it is part of the Marist Brothers. And so I'd like to welcome Brother Ernesto, who is the Superior General of the Marist Brothers, to speak with us first of all.
Reciban mis saludos, todos los maristas de Champañá y personas invitadas a este encuentro. Gracias por su presencia aquí en la sala Marcelino o conectados en línea. Gracias a los presentadores por su disponibilidad, señora María Donofrio, señora Alessandra Aula y hermano Fortune Chacazara. Hoy es un día importante en el cual celebramos el Día Internacional de los Derechos del Niño. Se conmemoran los aniversarios de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos del Niño del año 1959. Y 30 años después, en el 89, la Asamblea de las Naciones Unidas, que aprobó la Convención sobre los Derechos del Niño, buscando asegurar su protección, educación, salud, el derecho de tener un nombre, una nacionalidad, una familia, entre otros. Agradezco esta iniciativa de encontrarnos para reflexionar sobre los derechos de los niños. FMSI, la Fundación Marista de Solidaridad Internacional, per il bene dei bambini, por el bien de los niños, ¿verdad? Al hermano Ken McDonald, del Consejo General, es el presidente, a Andrea Rossi, el director, todo el equipo, y al Secretariado de Solidaridad de nuestro Instituto Marista, con el hermano Ángel Diego, el director. Buscamos promover los derechos de los niños y su seguridad en medio de las dificultades y desafíos que vivimos. Me encontré este número de las 59 de nuestras constituciones. La sensibilidad de Marcelino Champañá ante las necesidades y el sufrimiento de los niños de su tiempo, nos anima a responder a los desafíos emergentes a los que la humanidad se enfrenta hoy. Por esta razón, promovemos y defendemos los derechos de los niños y jóvenes en todos los ámbitos de nuestro instituto. Junto con otras organizaciones, defendemos estos derechos en los organismos internacionales, los estados y otras instituciones públicas o privadas, comprometidas con la dignidad y el bienestar de la infancia y juventud. Y además hacemos de todas nuestras casas, centros educativos y obras sociales ambientes seguros, donde niños, jóvenes y adultos en situación de vulnerabilidad se sientan siempre respetados. Me pareció un número muy completo y muy bueno y muy adaptado al día de hoy. Saben que contamos con la herencia de este precioso don de nuestro fundador, San Marcelino. Alguien que fue capaz de tener oídos atentos y corazón audaz. Por eso estamos llamados a continuar con entusiasmo y entrega este sueño y esta fraternidad de Champañá, al servicio de los más necesitados, como hoy encontramos en tantos niños que sufren las necesidades emergentes a causa de la guerra, la pospandemia, la pérdida del sentido de la vida, la carencia de escuelas, la desconexión, etc. Bueno, y quería invitarlos para esta sesión a que sigamos una sugerencia que me encontré en otro documento que se llama La Regla de Vida de los hermanos maristas. Y miren lo que dice en el número 72. Fíjate especialmente en los más pequeños, en los niños y los jóvenes más olvidados. Permanece un momento ahí, en esa posición. Mira el mundo desde su perspectiva, con los ojos de un niño pobre. Si lo haces, te acercarás mucho a lo que Dios ve y ama. Solo ese amor puede transformar el mundo. Les comento que en el reciente sínodo que tuve el privilegio de asistir, al final en la carta dice y se refiere a los niños y jóvenes, escuchar la sencillez y vivacidad de los niños, el entusiasmo de los jóvenes, sus preguntas y sus peticiones. Sabemos que ellos son una riqueza entre nosotros, son el presente y el futuro de la Iglesia y el mundo. Y termino recordando a María, Maristas, nuestra buena madre. Ella estuvo atenta a las necesidades de su pueblo. Ella fue capaz de cuidar y acompañar a Jesús niño desde su nacimiento, que fue nada cómodo en un pesebre. Lo protegió en la huida a Egipto, lo ofreció en la presentación, lo buscó y escuchó cuando se le perdió a los 12 años. María sigue siendo nuestra inspiración para nuestra misión de educar y amar. Esta obra de amor, del cuidado y educación de los niños y jóvenes, es obra de María, como nos lo recordaba nuestro fundador. Por eso encomendamos a ella, Reina de la Paz, a tantas personas, particularmente a los niños y jóvenes, que son víctimas de la guerra, de abusos y de descuido de la humanidad. Muchas gracias por este encuentro de reflexión y por la misión que realiza cada uno de ustedes en favor de los niños y jóvenes en tantas partes del mundo. Que vaya muy bien el encuentro. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Ernesto, for your words, for understanding the importance that the work of FMSI and the Secretariat of Solidarity have in the Institute for defending and advocating for the rights of children. I think it is very important work, and so thank you very much for your words. I'm now going to ask Brother Fortune Chakasara to speak to us. Brother Fortune is from Zimbabwe. He lives in South Africa, in Cape Town. He has a large amount of experience in working with various organisations in Africa in advocating for the rights of children. He runs training in defending the rights of children with many organisations and dioceses. He's also a member of the FMSI board, and so we welcome him this morning to speak to us about the situation of child rights in Africa. Thank you very much, Brother Fortune.
Thank you very much, Ernesto, our Superior General, and Brother Ken, our President. Before we began, I was having a chat with Maria, because of the time, and I was saying, it's 15 minutes presentation. Where I come from in Africa, 15 minutes is greeting. However, we are going to work with what we have. So, thank you very much for everyone who has come for this important day that we come together to celebrate World Children's Day. And I think the theme that we chose this year, the right for children to be children, is very important and very key for us as an institute and also for our work that we do all over the world. I want also to start by a disclaimer that I'm going to work with the use of the general principle. When I say Africa, I mean a good number of the African countries that I've been to and where the brothers work and live. It may not necessarily reflect everything about Africa, as a good number of you know that Africa is different depending where you are. So my presentation today is not going to focus so much about children who live in the heart of Johannesburg, for example, in the heart of Cape Town, in the heart of Accra, in the heart of Lagos in Nigeria, or some of these metropolitan cities where we have children who live in opulence. But my presentation is going to focus mainly on children who live on the periphery of the society, the margins, some of the areas which do not exist to many people. These are the areas like the Zambezi Valley in Zimbabwe, for example, areas where are very hard to access, but areas where the Institute actually is doing a lot of work. So I'm going to speak to the reality of those children. And my presentation is based on research. It's also based on general observation and my own personal experience. It is very important that we take action for children's rights in Africa. Why do we need to do so? Because there is a general understanding, as I said, that context matters, that in some parts of Africa, children are supposed to be seen and not heard. So why seen and not heard? Why not be seen and heard at the same time? Children, we need to understand, are human beings and are fundamentally entitled to human rights that human beings have. They are not miniature adults. They have competencies that they have. So we need to treat them as human beings. We need to see them and also to hear them. Hence that cartoon says something that, what if the children also say that adults also need to be heard? They need to be seen and not heard. How would we feel? In going forward, I want to play for you a short video which illustrates some of the realities that I've talked about, children in some of the forgotten parts in the world.
Takwaba uabanga Yesu, takwaba uabanga Yesu, takwaba uabanga Yesu, takwaba takwakabe, takwaba uabanga Yesu, takwaba uabanga Yesu, takwaba uabanga Yesu.
So that was just a snippet of some of the conditions that you see that these children live and actually work in. That is why in one of my presentations, I'm going to talk about an African child as a miracle of versatility. Why does the African child become a miracle of versatility? But I want to take you through what Johannes Fabian said about denial of co-evilness. Because when we talk about children's rights and human rights, they must apply to everyone, everywhere. Johannes Fabian came up with this approach to say some societies, contemporary societies, are looked at depending with the time and space. So one might look at people in Africa with the time and space and confine them to the 16th century or 17th century. So if you look at that with your own eyes, then you realize that you are denying all these people co-evilness. That means that a child in New York City is entitled with the same rights as that child in Africa. So I'm simply saying that many children in Africa are being denied that co-evilness. And some of it, as you can see, is the perception of some of the cultural understanding of who children are from our own continent. And also, sometimes when we talk about children's rights in many places in Africa, they say this is a Eurocentric point of view. But as I'm saying that a European child is the same child as the African child. So we will not stop talking about the children's rights because we believe that they are human beings. They have these entitlements. And also unjustified wrongful cultural practice, which I will allude to later on in my presentation. I say that the African child is a miracle of versatility, as you saw, that the African child has the ability to adapt. This is unfortunate to different circumstances. Can be anything depending with the circumstance. Can be a worker, can be taken as a housewife, can be abused as a child soldier, can be forced into labor. So, and still smile at you. That's why I'm saying that this is a miracle of versatility. In the midst of all this, you still find all those touching smiles from the children. And I talked about poverty and impediment as an impediment to children's rights. We have been having this debate in many, many platforms that once we get rid of poverty, we are able to get rid of many things. Because for us, we are saying the shocking levels of poverty are some of the things that are leading to the abuses of children and children's rights in many parts of Africa. And we saw it with the launch of the New Horizons project through FMSI, that if you improve the income generating projects of the families, you also see an improved lifestyle, you also see an improvement in children's rights. It is a multifaceted approach into that. And of course, one thing that is worrying that you and I maybe have seen is the aspect of our African governments putting priorities in the wrong places. I'm going to speak to that a bit. The problem of putting priorities in wrong places can be seen by some of the budgets in our African countries. You see that a good number of countries have huge military expenditure, and yet we are not in war. Why spend so much money in buying latest jets that you see on African skies, and you can't feed your people? In fact, Professor Ali Mazrui, in his writing, the African A Triple Heritage, talks about this, that in the 70s in Europe, there was a race to the moon, that you guys were fighting to go to the moon, and you have been to the moon and you have come back. And then there was also the race to other planets, and you have sent gadgets and they've come back. But it's very difficult for the African to get to the village because there are no roads. And Professor Mazrui says, even if the African gets to the village, he may never be able to get back because maybe the road is closed because of floods. So priorities are very important, and some of our governments have put priorities in the wrong places. It's very easy to find a bottle of wine that is made in France in an African village than to find a clean glass of water, just to illustrate that some of our governments have put priorities in the wrong places. And hence we have situations like child labor. If you look at the statistics from ILO, they say that about 71 million children are in child labor at the moment in Africa, and 31.5 million children are exposed to harmful or hazardous work. Of course, the definition of ILO on child labor is a bit tricky because in Africa, we don't know where do you draw the line between domestic work and child labor. As you saw, some of those kids were doing domestic work from where they come from in their context. And if somebody looks at it from the ILO point of view, they would say these kids are exposed to child labor. But our efforts will not stop. Also, the right to education, which FMSI has been working quite strongly, because we are saying the children have a right to education, children have a right to learn. So if you keep them in school, then they are much protected. The longer they spend their time in school, the lesser they succumb to some of these things like child labor, forced marriages, for example, child sexual exploitation, and the use of children for begging, which I'll talk to later on. So we are saying that we need to do a lot of action in terms of keeping as many children as possible in school, which FMSI has done through the New Horizons, but the challenge still remains because sub-Saharan Africa, the statistics say, we have over 30 million children who are out of school, and this is primary education, who are out of school at the moment. So some of the governments neither have legislature that force parents to send their children to school. So there's still a long way to go. And of course, don't mind me there on the picture. I also want to talk about the child soldiers, which is the Article 22 of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children. We have over 250,000 children who are child soldiers. And out of all the child soldier population in the world, that constitute 40% are from Africa. That tells you a story. Yet our instruments, international instruments that the UNCRC and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of Children said, children are not supposed to be involved in armed conflict because these are the same children who suffer a lot during this. But we do have children in armed conflict in part of DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. In Uganda, north of Uganda, we have child soldiers. North of Mozambique at the moment. We're also in South Sudan. So just to mention a few of some of these countries where you have children who are taken to practice armed conflict. Of course, the reality in some parts of Africa is that you have children having children. So child sexual exploitation. When we went on the ground to try to understand why are children taken into marriage at an early stage, these are two types. The first type are those who are forced by their parents to marry because of poverty. The second type are those children who get into marriage themselves as a way of escaping poverty, because there is no other way. There is no other thing that they can do. Hence, as I said before, that if we make more efforts in providing education, we help these children from being exposed to child sexual exploitation and child marriages, and also child trafficking, which is quite rampant at the moment. The use of children for begging purposes, I've also seen it here in Europe, but it's not as rampant as in some of our African countries, particularly in West Africa, in such a way that the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare Committee of Experts decided to add Article 30 on that instrument to force governments to make it illegal to use children for begging purposes. You see it when you drive in the cities of Africa, children knocking on your door, a lot of children being used for this. And of course, the poor health delivery system, we have a high infant mortality rate. We have children who are dying below the age of 5, who are not supposed to be dying from preventable diseases. So we have children, for example, the statistics say 480,000 children die of malaria. It is the biggest killer disease for children below the age of 5. So some shocking statistics say every minute a child is dying in Africa because of malaria, which is preventable. And also we have waterborne diseases like bilharzia, we have typhoid, we have also cholera and malnutrition and lack of proper immunization programs. As I come to the end, I came up with this to say, we have to intervene in child rights in Africa and intensify our efforts to make sure that there's provision of quality of education, the introduction of child rights clubs. We have an initiative that we are beginning with FMSI in schools to make sure that they have these child rights clubs. So these help to boost the self-esteem of children. So we talk about what are called protective behaviors, that kids can also protect themselves from abuses, to empower children. This is an initiative that is starting very soon, but we need to spread it. And of course, as they are getting education, you also eradicate poverty and you develop the esteem of these kids. That's why I said we need the African child, there's still hope. In spite of all the gloom picture that I have said, we are calling for a child rights approach in all our Marist projects in Africa through FMSI. We are also calling for the creation of intervention programs which are multifaceted to address many issues. If you increase income generation, you bring a lot of income to these parents, then some of these problems will just fall away on their own. Intensification of child rights awareness initiatives with reference to the African Charter. Our own instruments in Africa is very good because the African Charter not only talks about children's rights, but talks about children's responsibilities, Article 31. That says children have rights, but they also have responsibilities. And we are fighting to make sure that Marist spaces of learning are safe spaces. Because when they come to learn, then they also feel safe. But we're also having initiatives where you need to feed them when they are in school, because food is also a bait. They know that at school there's food. When they come, then they would also eat there. We do not stop to engage other stakeholders. For example, the state, the government, despite the fact that they've put priorities in the wrong way, we still continue to show to them to say, this is the way we feel we need to move, and also work with other stakeholders who are also advocating for the same things. And we need to emphasize, lastly, on the priority over process principle. A good number of our governments, as I said, they don't prioritize children's rights. And we are saying to them, while process is very important of legislature and so forth, I think it's good for it to override a priority, for it to override a process. I believe a lot in process, but I think I will not leave a dying child on the streets because we need to follow a process. We need to act quickly and we need to act now. And we must make sure that states must go beyond ratification ceremonies that you see on TV, that they've ratified the African Charter, they've ratified the UNCRC, but there is no domestic legal implementation of laws that bring these instruments to the day-to-day child on the streets of many African countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fortune, for your description of the situation of children and the rights of children, particularly those on the margins in Africa. Thank you very much. Next, we'd like to ask Maria Donofrio. Maria Donofrio. Maria Donofrio is the Secretary General of CCIG, which is the Catholic Centre for International
Catholic Center of Geneva.
The International Catholic Centre of Geneva. Right. Maria works closely with both the Secretariat of Solidarity, with Brother Angel, and with FMSI. They work before the UN, advocating for child rights before the United Nations, in presenting UPRs and in networking with other organisations who advocate for child rights before the United Nations. So we'd ask Maria to speak with us now. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be with you today. I will have the same, and I want to, is it not too close? Closer. Like that? Okay, thank you. Do over again. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I also want to express my appreciation to FMSI and the Secretariato di Solidarietà for inviting me to contribute to this event. I am under the same time constraints that Brother Fortune, so it is a key that we go straight to the point. Now, the purpose of my presentation is to try to respond to two key questions. First, how can civil society enhance the protection of children's rights through the UN, the United Nations? And second, what is the added value of the networking of Catholic-inspired NGOs in the field of international advocacy for human rights? Now, why was I invited to provide a few inputs on this topic? The organization I work for, the CCG, is an umbrella organization involving more than 20 Catholic and Christian-inspired NGOs and a few individual members. The mission of the CCG is to empower NGOs to effectively engage with the UN system for the promotion and protection of human rights. In other words, what we want to achieve is to strengthen the capacity of NGOs to better benefit from all the tools that the UN provides to improve human rights implementation on the ground. Among other things, along the years, we developed a specific expertise in working with the Universal Periodic Review, the UPR, as a mechanism of the Human Rights Council, which is the main UN body mandated to address human rights violations worldwide. Both the UPR and the Human Rights Council sessions takes place in Geneva. Now, going straight to the point, why should we advocate for human rights at the international level? Why should we do that? Now, I think it's important to clarify first that regardless if we decide to engage or not, the UN system is there. So there is an international forum that is working to address human rights challenges. That is to say that the decision makers, especially state representatives, will gather in the UN and will adopt resolutions, make decisions, make recommendations to address human rights challenges worldwide. Now, what we want to avoid through international advocacy is that the decisions that will be in any case taken at the international level are disconnected from the reality on the ground. This is really important. It's important to create this bridge to make sure that the decision makers truly takes into account the real needs of the populations that are affected by human rights abuses. This is the main goal of international advocacy for human rights. And we hope to do that so that we can contribute to set up long-term structural and institutional changes that will allow us to effectively address and prevent human rights abuses. Both field of actions are really important. So address, but also prevent. And this can only be done if we try to address the root and systematic causes of these human rights abuses. Next, let's think a little bit about what is our role as a Catholic-inspired NGOs into that. What can we do? Does it even make sense for us to act in this kind of context? Now, I think we all know that on the ground, civil society organizations, and especially Catholic-inspired NGOs, are working with and for the most vulnerable individuals and communities, often reaching to remote areas where no other service is provided. This is why our presence, our services on the ground are important, because we respond to immediate needs of the people who are affected by human rights situation. However, the structural and societal factors allowing such human rights abuses still occurs and remain in place. So I think we have to rethink a little bit our role. I think that thanks to the proximity to the people who are suffering from this abuse, Catholic-inspired NGOs are aware of the real challenges that are encountered by the victims of violations, and therefore are better placed to identify what measures can truly be effective in order to address this abuse. Now, this unique knowledge, this true understanding of the local reality should be used not only to respond to the urgent and daily needs of affected population, it should be used also to set up long-term structural and institutional changes that will prevent these abuses to occur in the first place. So this approach basically enables Catholic-inspired NGOs to go beyond the exceptional work that is already happening on the ground in terms of direct services provided to affected population. And this will allow us to respond more comprehensively and more effective to the needs of this population, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. In other words, through international advocacy, the reporting of the key information to the UN level is a way to maximize the human rights work that is being already carried out on the ground. It's a way to maximize the impact of our work on the ground. So concretely, what can we do? So if we accept that it's good to engage in advocacy at the international level, concretely, what can we do? We have a group of actions that I would say are advocacy actions stricto sensu. We can definitely report the information we have through drafting and submission of reports to the United Nations. We can lobby member states of the Human Rights Council so that they truly understand the importance of the priority issues that we want, on which we think action is needed. And for the same purpose, we can take the floor through oral statement and organize public events in parallel with the session of the Human Rights Council. However, as international NGO representative, we know very well that these advocacy actions do not make much sense if there is not a close involvement of the people on the ground. So international NGO representative, without the needed support from the people who are affected by the human rights violations, does not make much sense. And this is why it's very important that advocacy actions are also supported by capacity building. This is why we run training in Geneva on the ground, virtual, in presence, to enable local actors to voice their concerns and to report those concerns to the international level, to the UN. And then, of course, capacity building is strictly linked to awareness raising and sensitization, because how can we expect local actors to report if they are not even aware of the rights that they have? And it's equally important that they are also aware of what is the commitment that their own government has made in order to implement these rights at the local level. An example of sensitization activities that we ran was, for instance, concretely in Togo in 2017. We prepared a booklet that translated the recommendations addressed to Togo during the UPR. by the international community in the 3 local languages, so that all population in the country could truly understand and be aware of what was happening, what was being discussed about their country at the international level. And in the same publication, we also included cartoons to explain the scope of these recommendations, so that really we could target a wide public on the ground. Something that also happened in PNG, for instance, with the Marist FMSI, we organized a radio sensitization on human rights. So we booked a slot for human rights activists on the national radio so that they could openly discuss what they were experiencing and observing as a challenge for environment protection, children's rights, women's rights, people with disability rights in their country. And the wider public could listen and think about what they were also experiencing in the country. Finally, a last important point of attention is follow-up and monitoring. Once the international community has made specific recommendations to one specific state, it is important to monitor if and to which extent that state is truly committed to improve the implementation on the ground. And of course, only local actors are better placed to assess what is happening on the ground and if the state is truly maintaining its commitment. Now, we know that follow-up and monitoring, it's really critical, it's a crucial step. And this is why it is equally important to empower our local members, our local actors to engage in such monitoring activities. For instance, explain them how they can assess, what indicators can be set up to truly measure and evaluate the performance of their own governments, including indicators on budget allocations to actually give priority to the right issues in the country. The last point I wanted to address with you is to think a little bit about the added value of networking. So why it is worth it to join forces to improve, to enhance the protection of children's rights in particular. Now, of course, if we act together, we gain more leverage while reporting the information. It's not just one NGO reporting about violation of the right to education for children in the tea gardens of Bangladesh, but it's more organizations affirming and reporting this information. So obviously the information provided gain weight on one hand, and on the other hand, the issues to what we want to give visibility is gain more visibility, and therefore we can call for proper and more effective action by the decision makers, that is to say, member states. Another important advantage is that when we work together, we can have a greater impact even with limited resources. And we know very well, I'm sure all of us know what it means to try to achieve something very ambitious with limited resources. So I think this is another key element to be taken into consideration, together with the fact that through networking, we identify partners to rely on, not only in Geneva, but also on the ground. And this is also something important that we can offer to our local partners, the possibility to work together with others in advocating for their rights. To conclude, I just want to bring a couple of examples of concrete projects that we were able to implement the CCAG together with FMSI, but also with other Catholic-inspired NGOs. In particular, in 2019, we ran a capacity building project in Bolivia addressed to children and women's rights defenders. As a result of this project, a coalition of 18 local NGOs was created. The coalition drafted a report that was submitted for the UPR of Bolivia, focusing on 3 main priorities, namely child and youth participation, child labor, violence against women and children. I'm sure that some of the issues that Brother Fortunat will come out here as well. So you see the synergy, how one hand can help the other. As part of this project, we organized also a public event in Geneva, and we were able to bring local people, so the local defenders from Bolivia to Geneva, to voice their concerns, and vis-à-vis member states representative. It's always very impactful when we can have people who are experiencing the violations on the ground to directly speak with the member states representative and explain why it is important that actions are taken to address those challenges. And also the presentation of oral intervention in the Human Rights Council contribute to that same objective. In terms of impact, if I have to mention a couple of big results that came out from this project, first, there were 16 recommendations that were addressed to Bolivia during the Universal Periodic Review. And these 16 recommendations specifically reiterated action points that were raised by our coalition. So there was a strict convergence between what our members wanted to be recommended to Bolivia and what other member states truly asked Bolivia to implement on the ground. So a very good impact on the decision-making processes, international decision-making processes I was mentioning at the beginning of my presentation. A second important outcome was that the local actors who were involved in this project decided to commit in a follow-up project to monitor how these same recommendations would be implemented later on. And I think this is also important because we know how challenging it is for our local actors to engage in advocacy actions. We know that they have already so much work that they are taking care of, that it's on their shoulders. So for them to decide to engage more was a concrete sign of success of this project. A second project we ran was in Papua New Guinea, PNG, in 2021. This time we had a coalition of 16 NGOs that decided to engage specifically to promote, again, children's rights, women's rights, people with disability rights, and environmental protection, another key area of concern for so many Catholic-inspired NGOs nowadays. Again, an event was realized, a public event, and what is interesting here is that this event provided an opportunity for key stakeholders to actually gather together. We had a representative of the PNG government, we had a representative of the UN based in PNG, we had civil society representatives, including the PNG Council of Churches, who contribute to the same discussions. The idea here is to gather together and try to identify together what are the key issues that need to be addressed, but also look for joint solutions from all the stakeholders to truly address the issue. Again, look for the root causes of a human rights violation and try to address that in order to bring long-term changes. Last but not least, this is the most recent project that we realized together with the Marist again in Bangladesh, focusing on the situation of children and their families in the tea gardens, which is another very interesting, it has been a very interesting opportunity again to bring a concrete issue to the attention of the UN and look for concrete actions. I will end up here. I hope I'm good with the time, good enough, at least, good enough. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for your words about the importance of advocating before the UN, but not only that, the importance of engaging with local networks and local people so that the work that is done at the UN actually has an impact for the life of children on the ground. So thank you very much. Our final part of the event today is the presentation of award. It's an award. It's an award from FMSI and the Secretariat of Solidarity, and it's called A Better World for Children. So I'll invite Andrea, who is the Secretary General of FMSI, to come forward to explain a little bit about the award and to present the award. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here today. Thank you so much for coming here, you in presence, and thank you for all the people connected via Zoom. I think we have over 200 participants connected from everywhere in the world, people waking up very early in the morning to connect from Mexico, from Guatemala. So greetings to you all. And it's a great honor to present this second award for us. It's the second year in a row that we give this award called A Better World for Children. And this year we have a very specific topic, which is child rights. And in particular, we are talking about rights, dignity, and participation. And with these three key words in mind, I would like to officially give the award this year to BICE. So I would like Alessandra Aula to come and join me to receive the prize. And Alessandra can tell us more about the projects in Ivory Coast. Yeah? Thank you, Alessandra. Do you want me to hold the microphone for you?
No, it's okay. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Brother Ken, Brother Nestor, Brother Angel Diego, and all of you for your presence and for the award that goes to Dignité et Droit pour les Enfants en Côte d'Ivoire, which is a member of BICE Network, like the Marist. So this is an award from a member to a member through BICE. So that's a wonderful example of cooperation and collaboration. With the project that you decided to award precisely deals with child participation, and it's implemented, the first part of the project is implemented in 2 high schools in one of the poorest area of Abidjan, an area called Abobo. And it aims to sensitize to child rights and prevention of violence starting from adolescents in these schools, 1,700 adolescents and about 300 young adults that have to repeat classes. So there will be, first of all, there will be awareness raising in what are child rights through sketches, theaters, and other recreational activities, celebrations like the 16th of June, the African Child Day, so that there will be this culture of rights that starts from high schools to be implemented. The project will also specifically help 20 adolescents that are class delegates to become even more at ease in talk publicly about child rights, so that they can be really becoming child rights defenders and an example for their peers. But there is also another part of the project that this award will allow to be accomplished, which deals with 70 children or adolescents more that have been deprived of liberty because they were in conflict with the law, and that our member organizations help them to reintegrate socially and with their family, and to prevent that they fall again into criminality. So again, the award will allow these adolescents to receive psychoeducation sessions and psychological support, resilience support on how to prepare their reintegration and their way out into society.
For being with us today, for your words, and for the work that you do in defending the rights of children. So thank you very much. I would now like to invite you all to a buffet lunch, which is around, I think, Francesco, people will guide you to where it is. It's around in what is called the Hall of the Superior Generals. Okay, so thank you very much.